Hello again, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar presented by the Teacher Enrichment Program of the Center for Excellence in Education. My name is Shannon Tyler, and I am the Teacher Enrichment Program Manager. I will be hosting today's webinar titled TEP Hosts Science is Elemental. We have an exciting speaker with us today, Dr. Ann Miller. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin, I'm going to share some brief background information on our organization. The Center for Excellence in Education was founded in 1983 by Joanne DeGennaro and Admiral Rickover, father of the nuclear navy and civilian uses of nuclear power. Its mission is to nurture high school and university scholars to careers of excellence in leadership in STEM. We have cost-free programs for teachers and students, including the Research Science Institute, or RSI, the USA Bio-Olympiad, or USABO, the Teacher Enrichment Program, TEP, and STEM Lyceums. I will talk a little bit about these programs on these next slides. So first we have the Research Science Institute, or RSI, which is a highly competitive 6-week summer science and engineering program open to rising high school seniors, with juniors being eligible to apply. RSI is the first cost-free summer science and engineering program that combines on-campus coursework in scientific theory with off-campus work in science and technology research. Next, we have the USA Bio-Olympiad, or USABO, which is the premier biology competition for high school students in the United States. It provides the motivation, curricular resources, and skills training to take them beyond their classroom experience to the level of international competitiveness. A fun fact about the USABO is since CEE began administering the test in 2003, every member of the USA Bio-Olympiad team has medaled at the International Biology Olympiad. Next, we have the Teacher Enrichment Program, or TEP, which is hosting this webinar today. TEP provides opportunities for middle and high school teachers to connect with leading experts from industry and academia, explore cutting-edge research and development, and make meaningful professional links with direct benefits for educators and their students. Finally, we have our newest initiative at CE, STEM Lyceums, which is a virtual club for high school students to meet once a month to learn about STEM career pathways from leading field experts. Industry professionals share cutting-edge research and offer unique learning experiences like scholarships and internship opportunities for high achievers. To learn more about our programs and opportunities, please visit our website at www.cee.org, and we also dropped the links in our chat. Before I introduce our speaker, I would like to encourage you to take notes while you listen and to ask questions. Please submit your questions through the Q&A function in the chat, and they will be addressed by our speaker at the end of the presentation. Now, I am happy to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Ann Miller. Dr. Ann Miller is currently the Executive Director at Science is Elemental, a science education 501c3 nonprofit. She is also the principal at A. Miller Analysis and Consulting LLC, Chief Program Manager at Chemists Without Borders, and a board member of the Montgomery County Coalition for Adult Literacy. Dr. Miller worked as a senior research scientist at CNA, a not-for-profit research and analysis organization from 1993 to 2021. Her work focused on analysis of training, education, readiness, logistics, and technology, and has led numerous projects for the Navy and Marine Corps. Through CNA, she has also provided technical support and analysis to the West Virginia Department of Education. In her work with Science is Elemental, Dr. Miller has interacted either through consultation, teaching, or both with several educational institutions. These include the Springwell School in Silver Spring, Maryland, Art, Play, Learn in Laurel, Maryland, Baltimore City Public Schools, Because Science in Washington, D.C., the Holland Brook Elementary School in Reddington, New Jersey, and the Solar Impact Beehive in Los Angeles, California. She has developed integrated science, sports, art, music lessons, and provided these lessons in school settings. In addition to her board work and founding Science is Elemental, Dr. Miller's experience with nonprofit charitable organizations include 6 Compass Pro Bono projects, 3 Taproot projects, and providing analytical support to the CCE Music and Dance Week. She uses her analytical capabilities to support decision-making, staffing considerations, survey development, data collection, and analysis. For over 20 years, Dr. Miller has been involved as a tutor, mentor, and coordinator of tutoring/mentoring activities for elementary school students. Dr. Miller received her PhD in chemistry from the California Institute of Technology and her BA in chemistry from the University of Pennsylvania. So we are very excited to hear from our speaker today, and we welcome you to take it over.
Hi, thanks so much, Shannon. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm truly honored. And I'd like to talk to you today about this integrated science workshops that I and others have developed with Science is Elemental, and what they are and what they can potentially do for students. So what the science of soccer can do for students. So first, a little bit about Science is Elemental. We are a 501c3 nonprofit established in August 2022. And our mission is to encourage more understanding of and respect for the scientific process by all high school graduates, and particularly to do so in two ways. One, to start early in elementary school, but our guiding principle is to bring science to those students who do not yet show interest or aptitude. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. I don't agree with this, that this view of science, but unfortunately too often science looks like what people think about it is that it's what nerds do, or it's too hard, or it's boring, it's not for me. And I'm on a mission to turn that around. But what science really is, and I think everyone here probably agrees with this, the whole and in part, is part of everything we do. Definitely achievable by all, taught the right way, fascinating and relevant, and hopefully increasingly open to everyone. So why are we bringing science to the kids, particularly the kids who don't already know they like science? There are many, many truly valuable programs that target students who are already interested in science, or that target parents who want their kids to be interested in science. Those programs are vital, they're necessary, but I think Science is Elemental is trying to reach different kids. They're trying to reach kids who love other things, don't realize science is a part of them, and could be part of enriching their experience in all aspects of their lives. So we want to bring science to the activities kids love, which is mostly what I'm going to talk about today. We also want to support elementary school teachers. We support all teachers, focus on elementary school, and you'll see as I go further in the talk that we've given these workshops at all grade levels. And just make kids who are eventually going to be adults aware more of all the science and all that they do. The other thing we're looking to do, and I'm excited today to talk to you about this, is to train others to provide what we are providing in our integrated science workshops. If my goal is to reach all these kids, then we have to train others, because I can only do so much. I reach about 200 kids a year. I can probably increase that a little bit, but it's just one or two people in Science is Elemental right now. We're very new. That's not enough. So the more teachers that use these, the more kids that are reached. That's exactly what I want. Happy to discuss options with teachers anywhere at any grade level. Again, focusing science, mostly elementary, but moving into middle school level as well. And I have my contact information at the end of this presentation. So if you want to talk, great, I'm for it. The title of the talk brings in my Science of Soccer workshop, so I'll talk about that. And we do this in two different ways. You could have a one-time workshop. We choose one or two skills appropriate to the venue and the age of the kids and work with that. And in a week-long workshop, we build from basic, both soccer skills and science skills, to scrimmages using all the soccer techniques enhanced by the associated understanding of the science behind them. So for instance, we might talk about force and velocity, and in terms of dribbling and passing. And in all of this, we also infuse the day or the week with experimentation. What works best? Which part of the foot works better to dribble, to keep control of the ball? If with force and velocity and acceleration in terms of kicking goals, do you get more speed if you take a few running steps, or if you just kick it without moving. We get the kids to experiment and get data while they're improving their soccer skills and learning about these concepts of physics. Goaltending falls in that category because it's sudden negative acceleration. We also, for the older kids, and this is really where it reaches into middle school or advanced elementary school, later elementary school, is talk about vectors. Vector is a object moving with a speed in a direction. The first reason why I wanted to start early in this effort with soccer is because it became clear to me that soccer is nothing but vector. It's kids moving in a speed and direction, balls moving in speeds and direction. And so for kids who are ready for that, explaining about vector as they're maneuvering around an opponent to get the ball, keep the ball or get the ball away from them, allows us to introduce that concept. So it's a nice way of introducing some pretty fundamental concepts of physics that I think too often only get introduced in high school physics, and kids find them, I know I did, a little bit difficult to comprehend because they'd never heard them before, even though all of these concepts are involved in the games they play from an early age. But science is found in many kids' activities, and this is by no means a complete list. I went through and got a much larger list. This is what could fit on a slide. If you think about psychology with drama and debate, junior achievement when it comes to are you trying to sell something? Horseback riding, that you get into the psychology of the relationship between the rider and the horse. Neurobiology talks, again, drama and debate, pets, understanding how dogs and cats, how their brains work. The visual arts in terms of the optical cortex. So there's a lot to work with there. Biology, we've mentioned some of these in terms of neurobiology, but dance and martial arts, the balance that's required in both of those, similar to circus arts, and the other movements that have biophysical aspects to them. In physics, we talked about soccer, there's football, there's tennis. We do the martial arts with that too, with the concept of acceleration and force. Music, we do music and vibration. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Fluid mechanics, swimming. I just talked to a new volunteer who's very excited about developing a workshop with fluid mechanics and the physics of swimming. And then chemistry, cooking, baking, and the visual arts. Why is it that the paints we have those pigments? And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. In fact, that's the next slide. I collectively call two different classes together. Why is purple purple? Purple's my favorite color. And it's intended for kids who love art to bring that understanding that the pigments they use, the colors they work with, actually have a chemical basis. We provided that to kids aged 7 to 17. That asterisk there is for a purpose. The physics of light and color works for all ages. The chemistry of color, because it by necessity starts talking about chemical bonding, really is better for ages 11 and up. The younger kids don't quite have the abstract thinking to get that. I've taught that in summer camps in Baltimore City schools. But why do objects have the color they do, and why do we see color is what we talk about in these two workshops. And physics of light and color, they work better if I do the physics first, then the chemistry. So how do we do that? Well, I use jump ropes, and you'll see this again in the music. I want the kids to see a standing wave, to recognize what a wave looks like. I then introduce the electromagnetic spectrum. I thought when I first did this for a high school class, they'd be like, oh, we know that stuff. They did not really. They were, so I'm sure they'd seen it before, but it's helpful to reintroduce. And then I have them enact the spectrum, and I actually get the kids involved in moving, which is both good to keep their interest up and keep them from being distracted, but also helps them internalize that electromagnetic spectrum and what that means. And so I'll look for the highest energy kids in the class and their gamma rays, and I make them run really quickly in a really short space because gamma rays have a tiny wavelength that are really high energy, and then go through the different parts of the spectrum, getting slower and moving further each time. And there's always kids who don't want to be there. If it's a morning class, they're not awake yet. And they are radio waves. So they lumber across the entire length of the classroom as slowly as they can. And I will tell you that I believe every kid who has played gamma rays so far will remember what gamma rays are, because they're exhausted by the end of it. I then bring out prisms so they can actually break apart white light and see the spectrum themselves. And then we do an art project involving the spectrum. And I've done this largely with the organization that Shannon mentioned at the beginning, Art, Play, Learn. She brings the art, I bring the science. It's a nice partnership. But again, I've partnered with others as well in this class. In the chemistry of color, it gets more abstract because it relates to chemical bonding. But one way to bring that kids is through magnetism, because magnets work for the same reason the chemical bonds work, because electrons have spin. And so I get the kids to play with the magnets, see how they attract and repel. I actually get the kids up and spinning for first exercise. Then they play with the magnets. And I talk about how magnets are magnetized because all the electrons in each atom, the extra electron, excuse me, have the same spin. And I explained that why the magnets repel each other if they're put at the same pole to same pole, because electrons with like spin repel, electrons with opposite spin attract. Hence, electrons with opposite spin create chemical bonds. But then I get the kids up and I tell them, you have to do this slowly, because the electrons do it because of physical forces, but you will have trouble trying to attract and repel. You have to think about it. And so they have to really slow down their spinning. So they think about, am I spinning this way and the other person's spinning that way? Then we're attracting. But if they're spinning the same way, then we're repelling. And it's kind of fun to watch them in the classroom do that and give them that sense of what's going on. Then we have them look around the room, pick out objects. What color is it? We talk about why they see that color. Is it reflected in absorbed light? About light, that the light that's absorbed we don't see, the lights that are reflected we do. And then we start talking about specific molecules. I use molecular models, I use PowerPoint slides, and I get the kids to create molecules with their own bodies. And we start talking about the simple molecules that don't have a lot of double bonds, that are all clear because they're reflecting only in the ultraviolet, which I refer back to the electromagnetic spectrum, until I finally get to a molecule that is not too big. It's full beam. It's a benzene isomer that actually has color, because it finally has enough double bonds to have enough electrons to lower the energy of what's reflected into the visible range. And that's how we talk about how bonding is responsible for the colors that we see. And then I show the molecules from nature that they see, the chlorophyll in the trees that make green, onion skins, and so forth. And we do an art project related to those colors from nature to tie it all together. This is the last workshop I'll talk about today. You'll see in a slide after this that I have many, many more workshops, but I didn't want to take up too much time, and I wanted to make sure we left time for questions. This is the music and vibration workshop. This is the single workshop version, so hour to an hour and a half, depending on what we have, the time we have. Again, jump ropes to show us standing waves so they can see a wave, because sound moves in wave. The physics is talking to them about amplitude and frequency. But I haven't emphasized this enough yet, and I want to now. These classes are not science classes with music or science classes with soccer. These are soccer classes with science and music classes with science. And the music in particular, I just gave one last week and it worked out really well. I spent a lot of time playing music that is loud or soft, so they understand, okay, the amplitude of wave means how loud it is, and then they get examples of the music. And we do the same thing for frequency. Is it high pitch or low pitch? But then we talk about the properties of the music itself. Is it fast or slow? What's the beat? Does it flow? Does it feel like you can move along with it? And for each one, we explore selected music for each one of those properties. And depending on the size of the group and how we think it's going to work, I'll introduce an instrument or two. Last week I had my fiddle, and the head of the group that was offering the class, it was a spring break camp, brought his electric guitar. So it's very much an exploration of music that includes the science. We do something special for the week-long version. It's more in depth than each of the properties. We do a little more music. We get the kids more involved with the music. Oh, hold on. I do want to mention one more game we play because it's really fun. When we do the amplitude, and that it means it's whether it's loud or soft. I get the kids lined up like in musical chairs. I mean, we don't take away chairs, but the first kid makes a very soft sound, and they get progressively louder to the last kid. Then they switch. The last kid goes back to the end, so every kid gets a chance to make a really loud sound, and they like that. For the week-long class, they also introduce an engineering aspect of building a tunable, playable stringed instrument. I think we all remember the kids creating the cigar box or cardboard box guitar with rubber bands that just sounded like rubber bands. I know my daughter, when she first was asked to do that, she's like, but I want to hear sound, like nice sound. So I decided we're going to do it with in a way that the kids can actually make some music. And we use wood and wire, something to use as a bridge. I found the really big Tootsie Roll Pops go over nicely with the kids. Although, of course, the instruments don't survive at the end because then they eat the Tootsie Roll Pop. And then we talk about the physics of the music and the tuning and what we're doing as we build. This is a list of the workshops we've done so far. Talked about physics of light and color, the chemistry of color, friction and tension, fabric arts. We talk about the forces of friction and tension, and then the kids weave. Biology of perception illusion, we talk about conscious perception, unconscious perception, and the biological basis of that. And then we look at illusions and optical illusions and other aspects of vision that trick us. And then the kids make their own optical illusion. I talked about the science of soccer. We talked a little bit about martial arts. We just did that for the first time. That one works well if someone has martial arts experience. Both the gentleman who created the class and myself do, and it worked out really well. I would say that one's a little harder to export generally unless someone has martial arts experience, but it could potentially be done. Becoming a computer is something I've done. It's actually based on, if you've read the book, The Three-Body Problem, it's not in the movie. There's a scene where they have just thousands upon thousands of people in a field because the civilization that's doing this doesn't have plastic and steel and metal technology. And they're using flags to create the logic gates that make up a computer, and it is a giant human computer. And so I get the kids to reenact this. In the process, they learn a little bit about how the inside of computers work, and they learn binary, how to count in binary. And the last time I did this, 10-year-old girls in the class ended up learning how to count at every base from 2 through 9. Obviously, they already knew base 10 during the course of the workshop. So that was really fun. The physics of resonance is kind of a subset with additions of the music. We do some other things as well. I'm happy to talk about that offline. That and Flight and Sail came about because I was asked to do it because science a full-day schools out camp on Veterans Day, and I wanted to honor the military services. So we did marching to talk about resonance. We did tested strengths of strings to talk about the toughness of Marines, and we did flight for the Air Force and sail for the Navy. And we had a good time with that, and we did some experimentation with that. Music and vibration, I've talked about. Energy and the environment, that came about for a similar Days Out Day for Martin Luther King Day. We had the kids experiment. And it was really cool because I had kids who were too young to write well, but they could draw the data. So they used pictures to take the data on which citrus fruit worked best when we tried to connect them to make a battery. So that was a lot of fun. And we did a whole bunch of other activities related to energy and the environment. And then communications was another day out class at because science, but these are all portable in many different settings. Looking at the science of communication, talking a little bit about some of these others. We built a radio. And so there's a lot to hear. There's more being developed as we speak. And that's what these are all about. So I'm happy to answer questions now. And also, I just want to leave this up there for two reasons. One, here's my contact information. But two, if you can with your phones, capture this QR code. It's a survey about this presentation that I'd really love feedback on. So if you would, I'd appreciate it. Maybe we can leave this up for a minute or two.
Thank you, Dr. Miller, for the great presentation. I thought it was very exciting to hear how you're integrating science into these activities that kids are and students are, familiar with. We will open the floor to questions. So if you have any, please drop them into the Q&A. I will get us started with some as people get theirs in. First, so what inspired you to start integrating science with the hands-on and, cross-disciplinary workshops? You talked about it a little bit, but can you expand upon it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, I worked for the same company for 28 years. It is a nonprofit organization that works mostly for the federal government. When your major client is the federal government as a nonprofit, your major funder is Congress. And that can be frustrating, as I think people can understand. And when I left, I knew I wanted to stay in the nonprofit world. And a good friend said to me, don't just take a job. You're very senior. Look around for the problems you want to fix and go fix them. It didn't take me long to figure out that it was science education, partly because of climate change denial, partly because of vaccine hesitancy, but also goes way back to high school when I realized that my friends who were very good at other subjects struggled in chemistry. I mean, I loved chemistry. Obviously, I majored in it. And it occurred to me that there was a gap somewhere. And I did some research and I realized the gap was largely in elementary school, that there's just not a lot of science in elementary school. And I realized also that there's this, and I'm sure middle school teachers and high school teachers are aware of this, as kids move into middle school, they become less and less interested in science. And I thought, if I brought science into the activities they love, maybe that will get more kids, not necessarily, I mean, great if they do turn into STEM, eventually have STEM majors, but just understand how much science affects their lives. That would be a wonderful thing.
I think that's great, exactly what you're doing, because I think it's a lot of what we see, as you said, and need to improve upon. We did get a question. It says, can you speak more about the energy and the environmental activities?
The basic idea, when we do days out camps with sciences element, because science rather, we have 5 to 11-year-olds nominally in the morning and 7 to 11-year-olds in the afternoon. So it's designed to have slightly more advanced materials in the afternoon. So what we did in the morning, the biggest thing we did is we did the experiment with the electricity. We talked about different kinds of energy. I had the kids hold on to each other tightly, grasping wrists and try to pull each other. And then I had them hold on to them loosely and I wanted to introduce the concept that a battery isn't just an energy storage device, it's an energy storage and release device. That it's very easy to make a device that will store energy, but not so easy to make one that will also let you get it back out. And I wanted to get that concept across of what a battery really was. We talked generally about energy needs in the world. I talked a little bit about how your body does something similarly I didn't name the molecules ATP and ADP, but that we have a molecule that detaches part of itself and reattaches to allow energy to be stored and released, much like a battery. We discussed current. I played a current game where they had them pass a ball to each other and time them to see how fast they could get it to pass. Um, um, and then we built the battery from the citrus fruit and tried different kinds. Then I juiced some of the lemons and had them make invisible ink and then show it up with a light. So that was fun. And so that was the morning with generally younger kids. It ends up that I had 5 and 6-year-olds all day and a couple of 4-year-olds in the morning. So it didn't quite work out, but we made it work. In the afternoon, I wanted to talk more about materials for electronics, what materials are needed to make batteries, and about the fact that they're not necessarily easy to find in the Earth's crust or particularly abundant. We talked a bit about mining to get these materials and what that's involved with that and what the trade-offs are. I had them do a few exercises where they had to mine through candies to find other candies. And I bought bribed candies that were still wrapped so they wouldn't eat the stuff they were all grubbing through. And then we talked about deep sea mining, and we did some experiments with that about some of the trade-offs, what gets ripped up off the sea floor. And we did some experiments with water and mud and different materials I brought in to show that depending on the bottom of the seafloor, what it's made of, different amounts of stuff can be pulled up when you try to mine. And then we talked about where mining can be done in the future and about asteroids, which ended up being a fun thing because they created a play at the end where they were asteroid mining and there was something that went wrong and they had a good time with that. So it was the general idea, we need energy, what batteries are, where does energy come from, what do we need to store energy, in terms of materials, where do those come from, and what are the trade-offs for doing that for the environment? So that was the class.
Thank you. So to kind of expand on it a little bit, so for educators who are new to integrating science into these broader activities, what's a simple first step they can try if they're, trying to do it on their own?
I would say, first of all, happy to talk to anyone, but first, I would say choose something you love to do. That the friction and tension came to my mind because I weave. The music came to my mind because I played the fiddle. The soccer was not something I did, but my kids played soccer, and so I knew enough about it to incorporate that. So go with what you know and incorporate the science that goes along with that, and Google is your friend.
I love that. So kind of on that same note too, do you have any tips for how to do this when resources or materials are limited?
That's a really good question. I try to spend as little as possible on resources. My kind of go-to guidelines are if we're going to make something the kids take home, no more than $10 to $15 per kid. And obviously in many circumstances that's not doable. I try to make the consumables just about $1 or $2 per kid. So because we're not going to get that back in any way. In most classes, there only the music and vibration one so far, and the weaving. But the weaving, I go to the local fabric store and buy their scraps for $2 a bag. So yeah, don't spend a lot of money. I mean, there's no reason to use what you have at home. I'd say the important things where to spend money are where it's safety related. For instance, in the science of soccer, one of the things we bought that year, the first year we did it, was gloves for the goalies in kid-sized hands to keep their hands safe. But there's absolutely much of this can be done with what you have on hand. One of the things I do to show kids what force they're putting on things, it goes well with the science of soccer class, is I take Jello and I make the jigglers formula, but I put even less water in, and then I vacuum seal it. So it's really squishy but it's stiff enough that there's a difference if you touch it or if you really pound it, or if you're talking about soccer, if you step on it or jump on it or run on it. It's like $3 per thing of Jello, and those things last. I've had some in my fridge for almost a year now. That still work. So yeah, minimize what you have to buy, only for safety, use materials that can last a long time. Those are my tips.
Thank you. Perfect. Which of your workshops do you think are most suited for high school students?
Absolutely. So the combination of the physics of color and the chemistry of color we've done at the high school level, and it worked out really well. It was to an art class, and that's largely because the influence of Art Play Learn who I'm working with, but I also think it's the right group,
Mhm.
that this is more, again, it's a science of art, not the art of science. Um, and then and then the biology of perception and illusion has gone well with every age group. And I've done it in at least one high school class, and they really enjoyed it.
Very cool.
And it was also an art class.
This one's kind of a fun one, and you don't have to give us too much information if you have something in the works. But if you could design your own dream workshop, unlimited time, budget, space, what would it look
Oh,
like?
wow. Wow. Unlimited time budget. I'll tell you what I think it is. And this would take a lot of work on my part because I would have a lot of physics learning to do to make this work for the kids. But although don't like enjoy being on roller coasters, I think the building of them and the um and watching a device go through, so out of Lego or um out of Hot Wheels or some other toy cars or a mix of materials, having the kids design and build a working roller coaster with the proper physics and also make it beautiful, make it attractive artistically, that would be an awesome workshop. But that would take a lot of money.
No, that's very cool though, and I think the students will love it. No one would have any complaints. All right, I don't see any more questions, so I'll have one more just to kind of wrap us up. Now that you've been doing this work and you're with the students and the teachers, if you could give one piece of advice to every science educator today on the webinar today, what would it be?
Find out what your kids care about and tell them the science that's associated with it. Or not just tell them, but have them. And I truly realize this, the teachers are bound by the curriculum and they have to do that. But if you can, in the few moments you have free that's not bound by that curriculum, talk with kids about what they care about and mention the science that's associated with it. I think that would go a long way.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any more questions coming in, so we will go ahead and wrap up our Q&A. If anyone does have any additional questions, I saw Dr. Miller had her email up. I am happy to share it as well. Or you can send them to me and I will get them to her so that we can get your questions answered. Or again, these workshops are great resources for you all. I think you should really take advantage of them, and she's very willing to speak to you guys. Last but not least, I would like to extend a special thank you to our sponsors for supporting us and making these cost-free webinars possible for you all. And lastly, I would also like to thank all of you in our audience today for attending. We really hope you enjoyed it. I kindly ask that you take a minute to fill out our post-webinar survey. Your feedback makes it possible for us to serve your needs. The links to these surveys will also be emailed to you so you can complete it at your leisure if right now is not a good time. And with that, thank you again to our speaker, Dr. Ann Miller, and to you all for joining us. And be sure to be on the lookout for our future events. Thank
Thank you
you
so
all.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.